Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel. Thanks for logging on. If you enjoyed these videos, do me a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel right here at Watchbox Reviews. I would really appreciate it, and I promise to update daily. If you love this watch, you can see it and you can purchase it on our website, thewatchbox.com. Today, we're discussing a rarity. One of 50 pieces, this is the Bulgari Octo Finissimo Revolution Magazine Limited Edition. 50 pieces, matte titanium, 40 millimeters, ultra thin. On my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, you can see this timepiece dedicated to the world's finest luxury watch magazine cuts a striking figure. It's broad, contemporary, full in figure, but ultra thin, only 5.4 millimeters thick as my calipers read it. The basic watch debuted at Baselworld 2014, the first of the eventual Octo Finissimo model line that became a juggernaut and ultimately inspired award-winning watches that allowed Bulgari to come into its own as a manufacturer. Bulgari, out of Le Sentier, Switzerland, renders both the watch and the movement within, and it's remarkably compact across the wrist, only 46 millimeters lug to lug. You're going to have no trouble wearing this feather-light titanium case. It is broad across the wrist. Now, you can fit a strap to the watch, but you're best off going with a Bulgari factory piece because the spacing between the lugs of 30 millimeters is highly non-standard, but it allows the watch to look wonderfully coherent, integrated, and planted on the wrist. I like. Now, the timepiece is also a pre-owned watch, which gives me a rare opportunity to take a look at an example of one of these still fairly rare timepieces that's actually been through the ravages and rigors of the real world. I'm going to show you how it's worn and how it's worn down, and it's held up better than I expected. The entire external finish is of a blasted or matte. As you can see, the links themselves are broad but narrow, with the result that this is a remarkably supple bracelet on the wrist. It has a souplesse equal to anything from a bracelet of the finest quality to a silk strap of the most supple nature. This is as comfortable as anything made of hide, textile, or metal that you will ever encounter. You can also see it features a little bit of a downswept center link profile that gives it a little bit of a three-dimensionality that I appreciate. And you can see on the underside, plenty of daylight. It won't pinch skin, it won't trap wrist heat, it won't pull wrist hair. There are many individual removable links, and as you can see on both sides, so you can really dial in the fit of this watch. And the clasp is a twin fold, which I like because as one with a smaller wrist, a twin fold is less likely to pinch and offend a wrist. Now, externally, the bottom of a clasp is the part of a watch that is going to take the brunt of the beatings on the wrist. This is where all the desk diving injuries happen. But as you can see, despite the fact that this is a matte finished titanium and that tends to be extremely susceptible to marks, there is very little visible wear, and that encourages me because, like I said, these are rare watches and I haven't seen too many that have been worn. This example has been, and I'm going to show you those rare cases where wear does show, but I'm happy to say it's been remarkably scant. There's a handsome integration of case, lug, and bracelet that's led many to compare this watch to the great Gerald Genta watches of the 1970s, like the Jumbo Ingenieur, the Royal Oak, the Nautilus, and others inspired by Genta, like the Laureato of Girard-Perregaux and Rolex's Oyster Quartz, and it certainly deserves all of those comparisons. Bulgari boasts 110 facets. I've never counted all of them, but depending on how creatively you count, you can get up to a few dozen pretty quickly. I trust them. 5.4 millimeters thick, ultra thin. Dimensionally, it's exactly the same as the Octo Finissimo Automatic, so on the wrist, it's almost impossible to tell the two apart. This one has a longer power reserve and the pleasure of winding with a case-back power reserve indicator. That's the only real difference. You can see there's a tension between the broad stance of the watch and the razor-slim profile of the case. There's also a tension between the circular form of the outer bezel, the sapphire, and the geometric plinth on which the outer bezel sits, and the semi-geometric inner bezel, which is faceted much like the bezel of a Royal Oak. The dial is both titanium and blasted to match the case and bracelet. You'll also note that it's skeletonized with a wonderful three-dimensionality formed by a titanium blasted stencil on top of a high-polished and engine-turned base plate. The contrast is outstanding, and it has a lively reflectivity in the light. You'll note faceted and mirror-polished dauphine hands for hours, minutes, and seconds, and the timepiece with just a little bit of polish on the dial side and just a little bit about the double row knurling of the crown. You can see it's a double knurled crown, and it features a faceted and high polished ceramic cabochon outboard for scratch resistance. Turn it all over and you see BVL caliber 128, as well as the scant and discreet Revolution co-branding for this limited edition. You can see Revo's signature red star. on the case back, coaxial, or I should say co-occupant of the power reserve indicator, and the watch does feature a robust power reserve of approximately 65 hours. The manual wind having a bit more than the automatic. You can see that the movement is beautifully executed, largely hand finished with a little bit of machine aid. It's as nice as anything you'll get from a standard Audemars Piguet 3120 automatic or a Jaeger LeCoultre 890 series. So it's in that ilk of timepiece in terms of finish. Now, ultra thin, the movement is 36.6 millimeters in diameter, properly sized for the case, and that's the mark of a true manufacturer, but it's also only 2.23 millimeters thick. It's as thick as the automatic because the automatic uses a micro rotor in roughly the spot where the power reserve indicator sits on this watch. A full balance bridge impressed me. I did not expect to see a full balance bridge, but it makes sense as it helps to improve the stiffness of the movement itself, as well as provide better bracing for the balance, which in this watch you could see is fairly large with a fairly high polar moment. So this is a full-service real-world watch. Despite its slim profile and its broad stance, it does have 3 ATM or 30-meter water resistance, which is industry standard and most unexpected. The movement itself beating away at 28,800 vibrations per hour, so it has a modern beat rate. There are not many compromises in terms of durability or finish. Everything you would expect is here, beautifully arrayed inside a case, and bracelet, integrated, timeless, handsome, and wearable on a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters in circumference. I like this watch. I like the family. I like where Bulgari is going. I like the fact that they now build everything from the bracelet to the case to the movement. A true manufacturer born on the bones of the old Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth of Le Sentier. That's what Bulgari is today, and this is one of Bulgari's finest. 50 pieces for Revolution magazine. See it and make it yours on the Watchbox.